ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्. ॐ शांति शांति शांति. Namaste my dear friends. I am making this video on 40 verses on reality. These 40 verses were written by Bhagwan Sri Ramana Maharshi at the request of Murugnar, a close disciple of Maharshi. Murugnar wanted a concise synopsis of Ramana's teaching and wanted 40 verses to fit a classical Hindu poetic form. Ramana wrote the verses as they came to him, and Murugnar arranged them in a particular order. Later Ramana wrote 40 additional verses, and the original 40 verses were put into a supplement to the 40 verses. Advaita, non-duality, identity is the supreme doctrine expressed in these verses. Jnana Marga, the path of knowledge, is the approach to it. Self-inquiry, who am I, is the technique Bhagavan taught for this path. There is no more profound and comprehensive statement of it than his 40 verses on reality, or it is called Ulladu Narpadu in Tamil. So I start the video on 40 verses on reality. Invocation. Awareness is the nature of reality. Without awareness of reality, can a reality exist? Because this awareness, reality itself free from thought, exists as the source of all thoughts. It is called heart. How to know it? To be as it is, thought-free in the heart, is to know it. This verse and the next form the invocation, which customarily precedes spiritual and poetic works in Indian literature. It may be addressed to a particular deity such as Ganpati, the Deva in charge of poetic effusions, or to the Devas in general, to a favorite Devi, or to the Guru, or to one of the three major divinities. But Bhagavan, recognizing a single reality from which all things proceed, makes his dedication to that as the pure awareness, Chit, abiding in the heart as external existence, Sat, or the absolute Brahma. The literal translation of the first sentence of this verse reads, "Can there be awareness of that which is other than existence?" This makes knowledge or awareness the criterion of existence, because the non-existent cannot make itself known. The color, for example, that is not visible, or the sound that is not audible, amount to nothing. Invocation, verse 2. Fear of death is the driving force behind the quest for immortality. Those who have an infinite fear of death take refuge in the feet of the Supreme Lord who is without birth and death. Can the thought of death occur to those who have destroyed their eye and mind and have become immortal? Those who most identify themselves with the body are the people who fear death most. Seeing the dissolution of the body, they deduce their own dissolution to be simultaneous with it and dread the terrible unknown that lurks behind it. Their only hope of safety lies there in the worship of the Almighty Lord who alone is deathless. But those who through the practice of sadhana or spiritual discipline have transcended this false identification no longer have bodies to be the victims of death. Even the thought of death does not occur to them. They are videhas, bodiless, although they continue to occupy a body. This verse also implies that by taking refuge in the Lord, these fear-turned people will, in course of time, so progress spiritually that they will be able to destroy their sense of I and mine and attain immortality, since the death of the ego will evidently destroy death and the thought of death. Now, first verse. Awareness is all, the seer and seen, the real and apparent. Because the world is seen, we have to infer a common cause, a Lord, possessing unlimited powers to appear as the diversity. The pictures consisting of names and forms, the seer, the canvas, the light, all these are He Himself. The 40 begins here. To understand Bhagwan's meaning, we have to use the key with which He supplies us in the invocation. There He declares reality to be thought-free awareness which dwells in the heart. Here brings in the world in order to meet on their own ground those disciples who do perceive a real external world. He is saying something like this: you see a world and ascribe an omnipotent creator to it. But as we have already seen, this creation is only an appearance, a manifestation of that awareness of which we were speaking. It has no more reality in itself than have the pictures projected on a screen. From the heart, thoughts spontaneously rise like vapor from the ocean and turn into a kaleidoscopic world of names, forms, colors, sounds, smells, and other impressions. These are in it or on it as on a canvas of which the heart is itself the seer and the sight. Pure consciousness or pure mind is thus the pictures, the screen, the seer, and the light or sight. Second verse. The triad, God, soul, and world, is the creation of the ego and disappears with the ego. All schools of thought postulate the fundamental triad God, soul, and world, although all three are manifestations of the one. The belief that the three remain eternally lasts only as long as the I or ego lasts. To destroy the ego and remain in one's own state is best. Most religions are based on the assumption that the triad mentioned in the text is eternal. Bhagavan rejects this assumption as being the child of the ignorant ego which mistakes itself for the body. The I am the body notion compels the admissions of an individuality, Jiva, a world, its creator, as three distinct, perennial, coexisting entities. Bhagavan, as we have seen, perceives a single existence of which these three are an illusory manifestation which, however, vanishes the moment the eternal I is apprehended and the ego perishes. Verse number 3. Speculations about God and world avail nothing. Self-realization is the heart's cry of all. Of what avail to debate whether the world is real or unreal, sentient or insentient, pleasant or unpleasant? Extinguishing the ego, transcending the world, realizing the self, that is the state which is dear to all and free from the sense of unity and duality. The same line of thought continues. Destruction of the ego is a sine qua non for the realization of the self within the heart. It brings to an end all speculation about reality and unreality, God and world, whose true nature will be revealed in actual experience. This is the most blissful, attainable state and beyond the plurality of the illusory world. Verse number 4. Form and formlessness of the God depend on the ego's conception of itself. If the self be with form, God and the world will be also. If one be formless oneself, how and by whom can their forms be seen? Can there be sight without eyes? The self is the I, the limitless I. This refers to the Jnani who, although having a body, sees himself as bodiless and formless and so cannot see God or in fact see anything with form. The Ajnani, the non-realized, perceiving himself as a body, takes God also to be body and worships him in all sorts of material, formal representations. Yet the fact remains that even he perceives everything through his own formless self, which we have granted to be the only seers, the only knowledge there is, the limitless I. Those who condemn idol worship forget that they themselves worship material symbols and icons and attribute to God forms, dimensions, positions, even sentiments and sense perceptions exactly as they do to themselves. Having no experience or conception of a formless, omniscient spirit, they feel literally lost at the idea of worshipping something not represented in a form. God thus appears according to the degree of realization of one's self. Can there be sight without eyes? Means that without consciousness there can be no knowledge of anything, just as without a lamp none of the objects present in a dark room can be seen. Can there be a world to an unconscious man? Verse 5. The world is the body inclusive of the five seats, for without them the world cannot be conceived or perceived. The body is in the form of and includes the five seats. Is there a world apart from the body? Has anyone without a body seen the world? The body is a complex structure containing a large number of instruments or organs which the self as ego uses for a large number of purposes, including among others those of hearing, smelling, seeing, thinking, feeling, memorizing, and reasoning. The materials out of which these instruments or parts are made vary from the grossest to the finest. The Shastras, scriptures, have arranged them in 5 groups. To each group, one seat of kosa is assigned. The kosa dealing with purely physical matter is called annamaya kosa, the seat of food. The pranamaya kosa, the vital seat, looks after the fivefold functions of the vital energies: breathing, assimilation, generation, excretion, and locomotion. The manomaya kosha, mental seat, contains the faculties of mentation. The vijnanamaya kosha is the seat of the intellectual and reasoning faculties of scientific and philosophic thinking. And last is the anandamaya kosha, the seat of bliss or causal seat, which stores up within itself the karmic seeds of every birth and is concerned with that state in which profound peace is enjoyed by the dreamless sleeper. This kosa is made of the finest substance, sattva, which in itself is happy due to its freedom from grossness and its close proximity to the blissful self. Thus the term body includes all these koshas whose appearance and disappearance cause the appearance and disappearance of all objective and subjective perceptions. Assumption of a body is therefore necessary for the world's enjoyment, and the body owes its existence, as we shall see in the next verse, to the five senses, which are the properties of the mind. The world is what the mind conceives through the senses. The world is but the fivefold sense objects which are the results of the five senses. Since the mind perceives the world through the senses, is there a world without the mind? Through the sensory organs lodges in the five kosas, the senses display before the mind a variety of objects: physical, vital, emotional, mental, and intellectual. Apart from the five sense perceptions, there are all sorts of other internal senses which also arise from the mind, work through the mind, and are understood by the mind, such as the senses of time, of space or eye and mind, and the artistic, ethical, religious, and spiritual senses, for instance. Since all these senses form the world we know, we known and have one common origin, which is the mind. The world cannot therefore be other than that mind. Verse number 7. The world rises and sets with the knowledge of it. Both have their source in the self. Although the world and the awareness of it rise and set together, it is by awareness that the world is known. The source from which they both rise and into which they both set always shines without itself rising or setting. That alone is real. This verse is reminiscent of the invocation and confirm the previous verse, which make awareness the criterion of existence as well as the source of the world. Awareness always shines as the limitless I, mentioned in verse 4, the eternal knower. It goes without saying that the appearance of the world is simultaneously with the awareness of it, and disappearance of the world simultaneous with the withdrawal of that awareness. For the fact of the awareness of the world is the fact of its existence. We cannot affirm the existence of an object without first affirming awareness of it. Therefore, awareness is the only reality there is. Verse 8. Any sincere worship eventually leads to realization. In whatever name and form the nameless and formless is worshipped, therein lies the path of its realization. Realizing one's truth as the truth of that reality and merging into it is true realization. All roads lead to Rome. All sincere worship comes from the heart and leads to the formless God in the heart. To believe that one's reality is the same as God is an important step towards the realization of Him as pure consciousness and the process of merging into Him. How many millions of innocent human beings would have been spared the horror of religious persecutions throughout the centuries in the name of God, and how many wars would have been prevented had this truth been accepted as the one truth underlying all religions, the basic world faith. Verse number 9. The dyads and triads are supported by the one which can be discovered by inquiry. The dyads and triads rest on the basic one. Enquiring about that one in the mind, they will disappear. Those who see thus are the seers of truth. They remain unruffled. The dyads are the pairs of opposites knowledge and ignorance, light and darkness, happiness and misery, birth and death, etc. The triad is triple principle of seeing, seer and sight, object, subject and the perception of the former by the latter. All the numbers stand on and originate from the first number, so are the dyads and triads, based on arising from and of the same nature as the one seer, the perceiving mind, he who realizes the world as such remains a uniform serenity in all conditions of life. Verse number 10. Knowledge and ignorance are interrelated. Real knowledge arises by inquiring, for whom both knowledge, ignorance occur. Knowledge and ignorance are interrelated. The one does not exist without the other. Enquiring to whom is it that knowledge and that ignorance, and arriving at their root cause, the self, this is true knowledge. To speak of ignorance is to admit its opposite, knowledge, and vice versa. Until we become aware of an object, we remain ignorant of its existence. To learn a lesson is to admit our previous ignorance of its constant. Knowledge is thus the light which clears away the darkness of ignorance. But knowledge and ignorance which pertain to external objects are mere modes of thought. They come and go and are therefore of no consequence in the search for truth. What is of consequence is their knower who is fixed, changeless, also called first principle, because he is efficient, causeless, the eternal thinker who precedes and survives all his thoughts, the basic one, verse 9. Verse number 11. Not to seek the self, which is the source of knowledge, and ignorance is real ignorance. It is not ignorance to know all, but the all-knowing self. When the latter, the substratum of both knowledge and ignorance, is known, knowledge and ignorance themselves both disappear. It is, of course, foolish to know about everything in the world and remain ignorant of one's own self. Knowledge of the perishable, the universe and its contents perishes with the body and cannot be transferred to another body except perhaps as tendencies or abilities in the perishable too, which may not have any spiritual value in a future life. The imperishable alone endures and gives imperishable satisfaction, and this lies wholly within ourselves, who are the source and ground of both knowledge and ignorance, that is, of all experiences whatsoever. Verse number 12. True knowledge is self-effulgent. It is neither knowledge nor ignorance. True knowledge is neither knowledge or ignorance. Objective knowledge is not true knowledge, because the self is self-effulgent, having no second to know or be known. It is supreme knowledge, not empty nothingness. This continues the theme of verse 10 and 11. We have seen that objective knowledge is knowledge of the perishable, the apparent, the non-existent, the unreal. See invocation. Self-awareness is true knowledge because it is absolute, that is changeless, non-dual, ever pure, thought-free. This purity is not emptiness because of the lack of perceivable objective in it, but the ever shining plenum of awareness beings. Chitta Sattva. Verse number 13. Knowledge of diversity is ignorance, yet it is not apart from the self. Like the shapes of ornaments which are not apart from the gold. The self alone is knowledge, is truth. Knowledge of the diversity is ignorance, is false knowledge. Yet ignorance is not apart from the self, which is knowledge. Are the ornaments different from the gold which is real? So, the world with all its multiplicity of shapes, colors, smells, tastes, and so forth is nothing but pure consciousness in substance. Like variously shaped jewelry, which is nothing but gold. To perceive shapes, colors, smells, and the like as different from one another is ignorance, is illusion. But to see them as the single substance out of which they are made, the pure mind is true knowledge. Yet ignorance is not apart from the self, because all experiences as thoughts come from the self and are witnessed by it. Verse 6 and 7. So, I end this video here and will continue the rest of the verses starting from 14 in 2 more videos, because this is a very important spiritual topic. So thank you, my dear friends, for watching this video with reverence and with utmost attention. Please, thank you so much. Please like, comment and share the video and subscribe the channel. Thanks a lot. Namaskar, my dear friends. Thanks a lot again. Namaste.